Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is going to be titled Most Adults Are Not Mature. Immaturity is something I want to talk about today. Not just any kind, but a specific type of immaturity that seems to be growing more common. Normally, I try not to judge people's maturity levels because I wouldn't want someone doing the same to me. However, this issue has reached a point where I can't ignore it anymore. In my opinion, and of course this is just my perspective, the average adult today is shockingly immature. One of the best places to witness this firsthand is on social media, especially Facebook. I occasionally comment on public posts, whether in groups dedicated to certain topics like dogs, the weather, or even pages that promote distrust in people. These spaces attract all kinds of discussions, but more often than not, they devolve into petty, childish arguments. Someone might post about how all men are cheaters, and before you know it, there's an entire war happening in the comment section. People, many of whom are clearly grown adults, are flinging insults at each other like they're back in middle school. What really baffles me is that these aren't just young adults in their 20s or 30s. These are people in their 50s and 60s, sometimes even older. Their profile pictures show them as parents, grandparents, professionals, or even retirees, yet they're behaving like teenagers who just discovered online forums. It makes me wonder, how did they get to this point? At what age do people actually grow up? One would assume that by the time someone reaches their 50s or 60s, they'd have enough life experience to handle conflicts with grace. But instead, many of them resort to name-calling, sarcastic jabs, and personal attacks, rather than engaging in meaningful discussions. There's a complete lack of maturity when it comes to handling disagreements. Instead of de-escalating a situation or simply walking away, they double down and fight back with the same childish energy. It's disheartening because you would hope that maturity naturally comes with age, but that's clearly not the case. If anything, it seems like some people regress, almost as if they missed out on the emotional growth they should have gained earlier in life. Maybe they were never taught how to handle conflict, or maybe they just never cared to learn. Either way, it's pathetic to see full-grown adults behaving like kids throwing tantrums. And it's not just about conflict resolution, it's about setting an example. Some of these people are grandparents, meaning they have grandkids looking up to them. What kind of lesson are they teaching when they spend their time arguing with strangers on the internet? If their grandkids ever saw how they behave online, would they be proud? The same goes for parents who engage in these immature Facebook battles. How can they expect their children to grow into responsible, mature individuals when they themselves are acting like bickering teenagers? I know that immaturity has always existed, and every generation has its fair share of childish adults. But it seems more prevalent now, possibly because of social media. The internet gives people a platform to say whatever they want without real-life consequences, and many take full advantage of that. Behind a screen, people feel emboldened to act in ways they never would in person. Maybe that's part of the problem. There's no accountability. Of course, I recognize that maturity is subjective to some extent. What one person considers immature might seem completely normal to someone else. For example, some people think it's childish for grown men to wear Pokémon shirts or collect action figures, while others see it as harmless fun. Personal preferences aside, however, there are certain behaviors that are undeniably immature. Constant swearing, name-calling, and bullying others simply because of a difference in opinion. I've seen people in their 60s aggressively mocking strangers online over trivial disagreements, and that's just sad. You'd think that by that age, they'd have developed enough emotional intelligence to accept differing viewpoints. But apparently not. This whole situation makes me wonder, were these people always this immature, or did something in society make it worse? Have people always been this bad at handling disagreements, or has the internet just given them a louder voice? It's hard to say for sure, but what's clear is that immaturity isn't just a young person problem. In fact, I'd argue that some adults are more immature than the teenagers they criticize. The frustrating part is knowing that saying something to them won't make a difference. People who act immaturely online have probably been told countless times to grow up, yet they don't change. If they saw their behavior as a problem, they would have adjusted it long ago. That's the reality. Most of them don't care, and they certainly don't want to be criticized. That's why I try to pick my battles. Engaging with them often just fuels the fire, making the argument even worse. I could call them out, but in doing so, I'd be dragging myself into the very behavior I find annoying. Sometimes it's better to just let them be and move on. As tempting as it is to put them in their place, it's usually a waste of energy. At the end of the day, the world is always going to have immature people. That's just the way it is. But seeing it so frequently, especially in people who should know better, makes me question how they were raised. Were they never taught basic respect? Did no one ever tell them that not every disagreement needs to turn into a screaming match? Or do they just not care? Maybe immaturity isn't going away anytime soon. Maybe it's even getting worse. But the best thing to do is lead by example. If more people chose to rise above petty arguments instead of engaging in them, maybe, just maybe, there would be a shift. Until then, I'll continue shaking my head at the ridiculousness of it all and trying my best not to become part of the problem. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Signing out. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye for now.